Hey guys, so we're here, back again with another review, and today we'll be taking a look at the McFarlane Toys Spawn Universe Plague Spawn. Now before we get into the meat and taters of this review, let's first move Mr. Plague Spawn out of the way here. Gotta use both hands because he is a little tricky to stand, at least mine is. Let's first take a look-see at both the front, there you go, in the back of the packaging. Wow, that's some heavy metal album art for you. I dig that quite a bit. I wouldn't mind getting a poster of that. That said, though, you know, we do with boxes around here. So long. See you later. Get the heck out of here. Moving on to Mr. Plague Spawn. I'm going to lean him up against the backdrop here. There we go. That said, let me pan this camera up a little bit. There. Let's take a look at his accessories, starting off with his alternate hands, which are actually the ones he comes packaged with, but for all extensive purposes of this review, I swapped them out for the less Freddy Krueger looking hands. There's a joke here to be made. I'll get into that in a minute, but I do really like this hand. This one is in this weird kind of point-and pose, and I kind of wish it was just this one mirrored, because I really like this claw sculpt. It's a really cool claw sculpt, even though sometimes with McFarlane figures, they kind of look like they have arthritis. I know that's kind of to add over-exaggeration and stuff to them, because they are comic book characters after all. But some of it just looks like it'll hurt after a while. Shouldn't stay in that pose for too long. That said, like Haunt from the previous wave of Spawn Universe figures, he comes with this little base. Not the hockey puck display stand, obviously, but an extra base piece that has these little skulls impaled on these spikes coming out the ground. So, not sure if I'll use this, but I'm very tempted to, because it looks pretty sick. That said, taking a closer look at Plague. He, of course, also comes with the trademark hockey puck display stand we're used to seeing with all McFarlane Toys releases, with a big fat Spawn logo on it. That said, Plague Spawn. Once again, much like the Shadow of Spawn that I took a look at yesterday, please check that review out if you haven't already. Would really appreciate it if you did. Shout out to my awesome, epic, and amazing Aunt Tammy for hooking me up with this guy, as well as that Shadow of Spawn for Christmas this year. You rock, but you already knew that. I am sending her this video, so I can't use any potty words. Sad face. But that said, she'll probably be happy to know that I took the Freddy Krueger looking hands off this figure for this review, because she hates that son of a monkey. That said, this guy looks a lot like Carnage. From Marvel, the Spider-Man villain, Red Symbiote, Spawn of Venom. You probably know who that is if you're watching this video. If not, you're weird. Then again, most people are, so who cares? That said, though, he looks a lot like Carnage from Marvel, especially like the movie Carnage that had the spikes sticking out of it. And that's kind of hilarious, because Todd is essentially, in a way, ripping off himself when he's making these Spawn characters that look like symbiotes, because here's the deal. Without Todd McFarlane, we wouldn't have symbiotes, because he created Venom. And I know Venom first appeared in Secret Wars, but that was a boring look. McFarlane gave us the cool Eddie Brock one with the smirky Joker face and the big muscles and the claws and the big crazy looking eyes. And then Mark Bagley went and cranked it up with 211 with his design of the character, with the more pronounced fangs and the long tongue and the slime dripping out of his mouth. It's freaking awesome. But yeah, to say that Todd probably is kind of sore that he doesn't own Venom is probably an understatement, because Todd is a man of his own creation. He will not let anyone screw with Spawn. Like, not even a third-party company is safe from doing Spawn figures, because Todd will send the cease and desist on that rear end in the same day, probably within the hour of it being posted. So watch out, third-party companies. You ain't getting past the Todd father. But as far as articulation on this guy goes, he's got really good double ball peg in the head. Maybe not as good as Shadow of Spawn, but he can look down. a lot more than he can. He also has a tilt and rotation. His shoulders can go out to the side a little bit like the Shadow of Spawn. He does not have the ratchet on this side. He does on this side, though. It's not that much of a difference, I guess. Does have the rotation with the butterfly kind of ball joint in there. It's got the bicep swivel, which works fine on both sides. We'll say this side's a little tighter, but it is what it is. It's got a double elbow. It looks kind of chunky, but kind of not. It's covered in all these spikes and things, so he can kind of get away with that. Like Shadow of Spawn, who's all smooth, which I didn't mention, like a dum-dum. Oh well. Does not matter. It's in the past. That said, he has the sculpted wrist balls, which look good in neutral, but crap whenever you pose them. So, kind of have a love-hate for these. They look really good in neutral. Then when you do that, it just kind of towards the aesthetic. But you can rotate the hands, both the wrist and the hand itself. And the hands are easy enough to swap. I'm not going to do it here just to save time, but it is fairly simple. It's got a diaphragm joint that crunches way forward. Holy crap. And back pretty far. And with the waist, you can get even more. Probably about a right angle both ways, I would say. Yeah. Like Shadow of Spawn, it's butter smooth. It's not loose. I don't feel like I need to tighten it or anything. So that's a plus. You do get some tilt out of that too. It's pretty rad. More or less out of the waist than the torso, but you do get it out of both. And of course you get rotation out of both. Personally, I like the waist cut more than the diaphragm swivel, but that's just me. As far as his legs are concerned, he can kick forward pretty well, considering how the diaper is cut. He can kick back, not too much, because he's got super duper kick. That's like a 11 out of 10. That's a tightly clenched buttocks there. That arm out of the way. Can kick out to the side, almost splitsies. But I think that's probably good enough for him. He does have the thigh quiver in there, but it's nothing to write home about. Really tight hips, too. I like that. Double knee. It can be tricky to get to use, but it does work, and it does look clean enough. I'll take that. That's better than taking giant chunks out of it. Then he also has a rotation in the ankle, as well as a hinge, and a rocker, and a toe joint. And this is where my one point of contention with this figure lies. His ankles are too darn loose. He's got the sculpted ankle balls, yes, but they need to perfect these to where they are not loose. That said, I can get him to stand. He wants to fight me now. I see how it is. Want to be a diva on camera, Plague Spawn? Well, you will not succeed this day. There. See, he's standing. But it does take some fidgeting. That said, I can always hook him up with some adhesive and tighten that up if I really need to. But my Haunt figure, over time, got a little tighter in the ankles. So maybe, just maybe, the Plague Spawn will follow suit. I don't know. I'll have to wait a couple of months, let him sit on the shelf for a while, and see if things tighten up over time. But I have some confidence in this figure that that may happen. That said, is he top 10 of the year quality like the Shadow of Spawn? I am not sure. I love the sculpted paint on this thing. I think that's rad. I think he comes with a decent batch of accessories. No like effect piece like the Haunt figure did, but he does come with alternate hands and a base piece that's not just this. And the articulation is pretty solid throughout other than the ankles. Everything else is tight enough for me. I do have preferences when it comes to tightness and looseness in joints, but everything on him is pretty tip-top shape other than those ankles being a little bit on the loose side. And of course the toe joints, but toe joints are just, I don't know, a recipe for disaster because most of the time they're either not placed in the right area of the foot or they're loose. You can't win with toe joints. They should just stop trying to implement them into every figure, and people just need to, I don't know, quit getting a hard-on for them all the time. It doesn't make sense to me. I'll take the butterfly joints over those, because I can actually use those in some ways. So, with that being said, before this review drags out any longer than it already has, let's now move on and take a look at some size comparisons. And unlike the Shadow of Spawn review that I did yesterday, I unfortunately only have our two regulars handy for a comparison with good old Plague Spawn here. So, as usual, we have the Mythic Legion's Brother Mandibulus, 11th Spawn, who is not towering over everyone today, because if you haven't noticed, good old Al Simmons here is almost a head shorter than Plague Spawn. Not sure if he's supposed to be a taller character or not, but you guys know how I prefer my villains. I do like them taller than their heroes, because it makes them look more intimidating. I just think it's a cooler look, and, well, let's face it, short villains are just kind of lame. So with that being said, time to wrap things up with some final thoughts. Overall, and aside from my particular figure having loose ankles, not sure if that's going to be across the board or not. It's probably just mine because, well, it's mine. That's not killing this figure for me. I think this dude is freaking sick. It's one of my favorite Spawn figures that's come out in quite some time, and even despite the fact that he is a bitch to stand sometimes, you gotta finagle with it here and there. Again, at least mine. I do really enjoy posing this guy around, and can I just say that if you just want a cool looking, gnarly looking, wicked looking action figure that's fun to pose, this is one to pick up, because he's got the range, he's got the look, and he just, dang it all, if I didn't pose this guy well enough to sell me on something I already had. So, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you're so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. Stay tuned, because maybe tomorrow, Christmas Eve, I'll have something special going up. We shall see, but if you guys are wondering, Overlord, why are you going ham on reviews? You've uploaded one every day for the past 12 days. Have you figured it out yet? This is 12 days of toy reviews. Mostly so I don't have to review a bunch of stuff in January so I can make my top 10 list. Ugh. But with that being said, if you haven't already, hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep the comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is, especially when you have loosey-goosey footsie syndrome. Should probably see a doctor about that. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.